Inspiration is overrated. Marvelous. Now that I have your attention, I and perhaps you have often heard people say how they can't think of anything to paint, they don't know what to paint, they're not feeling inspired, or if they do paint, they're for some reason just trying to paint from their head, thinking that they can pre-visualize everything perfectly. They might have what we refer to as art block or artist block. Now, I'd like to think that just by implementing a few practices, this should never happen. In my previous video, I mentioned a few of the baseline subjects when it comes to painting. You'll have figure, nude and clothed, portrait, landscape, wildlife, still life. These are going to be your core subjects to go to when you want to paint anything. Now, if a miracle should happen and you come up with a good idea, it's likely to include one or more of those things that I just mentioned. It will have people that are in a place, or it might just be a place, or it'll be animals that are in a place, or it'll have stuff. There's your still life. So if you can get a grip on those various subject things, if you can do people, if you can do animals, if you can do places, if you can do stuff, you're going to be very versatile. And that will increase your imagination to make your own things and your own compositions. Now, I'm not talking about becoming a jack of all trades, doing all kinds of things. The idea is to still develop a consistent hand, a consistent style, but be versatile in the subjects that you can paint. That's what I try to achieve for myself. For the most part, I enjoy painting people, places, and animals. To say that I am a figure or portrait or landscape or wildlife artist would actually be a discredit to people that do specialize in each of those things. Now, being inspired is a wonderful position to be in. Likelihood is you'll be in an elevated state of emotion, you're excited, you feel good, you really want to get to a piece, but that takes time to get there. It often eludes us, and we are without inspiration. So in those scenarios, you can go to one of these areas as a default to pick a subject to get going, to start generating momentum so that every time you go to paint, you know what you're going to be doing and you're not tearing your hair out over the subject. But I truly believe in my heart of hearts, we should not be just sat waiting around, waiting for that ideal moment to come upon us. Now, as an artist, I think that one of the most useful things you can set for yourself are boundaries, parameters. Choice can spoil us, can overwhelm us, and we have no idea what to settle on. But if you have these things in mind, you think, okay, I need to paint either an animal, a person, or a place. And then within that, I think the two of the main factors that you should look to are, is the lighting on point, and is it a pleasing composition? For example, I chose a piece of reference to paint this lioness. It was a simple composition. It was a long grass field with this lioness standing in the middle in shadow with dappled light. I thought it was very iconic. There was good contrast. There were good hotspots of the lighting. It did the trick for me to just get painting and enjoy myself on this subject before I got stuck into something that I really, really wanted to get to. Now, if this was a figure, for example, you might want a fairly subdued background to just focus on the figure. Have perhaps a single light source so you know exactly where the directions are. It has clear shadows, core shadows, and highlights. If it was a place, maybe not something too flat. Unless you wanted to go for flat lighting, you might have some overcast or a dramatic time of lighting during the day, either in that golden hour of late in the afternoon or early in the morning. And as I said, having this set of go-tos will really just get you going. And whilst you're working on it, that's when you're going to think, man, I'd really like to paint X, Y, or Z. And you'll come up with that good idea. Or you'll at least start to come up with ideas. Jot them down. They might be awful at first. That's fine. You know, when you start doing anything, you suck at it. And then you keep doing it, and then you suck a little less at it. Then you do it for as long as you can. Eventually, you'll get good at it. And that'll be the same with the quality of your ideas. Of course, an alternative way to get through that is to not just paint from reference, is to paint someone else's painting. Look at the old masters. See all of the choices they have already made. You don't have to make those choices. You just have to replicate it, get some of that feeling into your own skill set so that you can take that into your own original work. Now let's say that the miracle has happened and you've thought of something. This is where either a sketchbook or a notebook is going to be so useful, because in all likelihood, if you're anything like me, you're going to eventually have more ideas than you have time to execute those ideas. And just write them down or do a little thumbnail sketch, a little compositional study to get that idea out of your head. And then when that idea is out of your head on paper, you'll see just how bad that idea is. I'm just joking, but not really. Often that is really the case. You have to write something down or sketch something out just to get that terrible idea out of your head, so you can then go on to something that actually works. Because if it doesn't work at a small scale, like a little 2x4 sketch, it's likely that it won't work any bigger. But let's say you start to compile a list of really good ideas, you can develop them into a hierarchy of which ones you want to paint first. And eventually, as I said, you'll have more compositions and paintings that you want to get out of you than you actually have time to paint them. Now eventually you get to the point where you have the very good problem of having lots of ideas. The thing is, when you get to that point, I think you also need to remember that you need to finish projects. I am pretty fanatical at wanting to finish paintings before I move on to the next. There's the old joke that, whilst you're working on one thing, there's that meme where the guy is looking behind whilst he's walking with a girlfriend, he sees another girl, and his current girlfriend is the thing that he's working on, and he looks behind, there's the new idea. I think you might know the meme that I'm talking about. Finish what you're working on. When you get used to finishing paintings, it will create a sense of discipline that I have started this thing, I must finish it, I must see it through to the end. And doing that, as weird as it sounds, will teach you what a finished painting looks like, or at least what your version of finished looks like. So often you hear, how do I know when a painting is finished? Personally for me, it's when I've said what I wanted to say, when nothing else is bothering me. But if you don't know what that stage is, you have to get to it repeatedly to be able to say comfortably on a regular basis, I'm done, I'm good, I can move on to the next one. It will increase your sense of clarity from the start of how you want your painting to look. If you start something and you have no clue of how it might end up, you're not going to know when you're finished. But the more you paint, the more you finish things, the greater you'll have a sense of how things should look before you start them. You're going to be able to pre-visualize them much easier because you have this backlog of things that you have finished and accomplished already. It's going to help concrete your process into your mindset. You think, okay, I'm starting the painting, I have to block in this stage, I'm working back to front. Okay, now it's dried, now it's set up, I can get in with the second layer, I can do some more finesse. Now that's dried. Okay, now after that, I know I'm going to do a bit of glazing. Now that's dried. Okay, that and that is wrong, I know I can fix that. Once those things are fixed, then I know it's going to be done, because you have the experience of having completed things. You know how to complete the next thing. And if you never complete anything, you're not going to be able to complete those great ideas that you come up with. You're not going to know how to resolve them. You might come into problems. You think, I don't know how to deal with that specific thing because I keep abandoning projects. Sometimes life happens and you have to lay something aside, or something great might happen. You might be working on a personal painting and someone says, I have a bunch of money, can you paint me this thing? And you think, hell yeah, I'll paint you this thing. And you put your own thing aside and you start painting the thing that might pay your bills for the next month. That's totally fine. That's an acceptable time to switch gears. But then after you painted the thing you got paid for, maybe go back and finish your personal thing that someone will hopefully buy that you are painting for yourself. Now, in some ways, the things that I might be saying might sound almost too logical and procedural and make it seem like the making of art is just a technical thing. But there are technical things that we need to get under our belt so that you can dip into that more expressive aspect of the creation process. But if you are constantly thinking about what you're going to do and how you're going to do something, that creative element is not going to come into it. When you have a rhythm, when I mentioned the word momentum, when you have the inertia to keep going, when your access to the easel, to the paint box, to references is accessible on a regular basis, it's going to feel like less of a strain to get those good ideas out. You have to break through these technical processes in order to get into that flow, into that rhythm, into this. It's a natural thing to use that imagination muscle. Inspiration is not just something that you keep waiting on. It is something that is constantly there, because that imagination muscle is so engaged that you can't help but flow with ideas. And as I said earlier, soon you'll have more ideas. You'll be too inspired and actually not have all the time that you want to execute them. Now we're getting close to the end of this painting demo. I hope you've enjoyed seeing me paint this lioness as I've been talking through these things. If you did, and you'd like to see the full time lapse and see every brushstroke, that is available to you on my Patreon. Just patreon.com/Daniel Macaluso. You'll find that there. And thank you so much for watching. Please remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you very soon. Thanks so much, everyone. Bye-bye.